Hello, everybody, and welcome. My name is Liam Hughes from Biggerplate.com, and I'm delighted today to have on the line with me Christophe, who's joining from Montpellier in France. Christophe is the founder and leader of Stemic, and I'm going to be picking his brains today and learning a little bit more about the past, the present, and future of this really interesting. I say it's new, Christophe. It's, I think, 2 years sort of you've been working on it now, but it's new in the general sense, I think.
It's 2 years we work on, but we're involved in since mid of 2000 years. Yeah.
So a while in development, but relatively sort of new to the market, I guess. So, Christophe, firstly, thank you for coming on to talk with me. We, as we tend to do, have already been talking for about an hour on everything from rugby to the terraces of Montpellier to everything else. I'm really excited to talk to you and give people a little bit of a sense of Stemic, which is a tool I really love. I think it's really elegant, really interesting, different to mind mapping, which is the purpose. That's the point. It is a bit different to normal mind mapping, and that's something we all talk about. But can you maybe just give us, you said you've been working on Stemic in some form since sort of many years ago. Where did it start? Where did life begin for Stemic as we know it today?
Stemic started 10, 15 years ago, and we are a design agency, a digital design agency, and we were involved in some research project working on knowledge modelization and the way that we put our minds on screen. And it started there where our designer designed some new way of describing things. Mind maps hopefully were yet existing, and we were working on that. And as time was evolving, at a time 3 years ago, I think we were around the table and we asked, well, we designed a lot of things, we did a lot of prototypes. What if we would do a different product? And when it was that time, it was because Stemic, as is available today, was tested, and we prototyped a lot of things. We were plugging some artificial intelligence tools on that and providing a lot of stuff, but it was still prototypes. So in computer science, prototypes can do a lot of things, but when the user want to take it, it's a little bit complicated. Yeah, and everybody compared us to mind maps.
Right.
Yes, because mind maps for me is a very, very good way to express what you have in mind. This is really the first time that some public tools, when I say public tools, it means that if I want to plan my wedding and I take a tool for mind mapping, I can use it. Yep. My mother can use it. No need to be a professional to use it. And that's what I talk about when I talk about good tools. So since people compare us to your kind of mind mapping tool, but a little bit different, well, we did it. We did a comparison and we checked what was different and what was the mandatory thing for the two and what are the differences.
And so if you were, so you sort of said, look, people are going to compare us to mind mapping tools, even though we don't think of ourselves necessarily as a mind mapping tool. People are going to do that comparison anyway. So let's make it easier for them. Let's help them understand what are the differences and what are the sort of benefits or use cases of each. So if you were going to kind of summarize what did you learn? What are the comparisons of, because Stemic, I would probably suggest is a concept mapping tool. Is that kind of the right label, do you think, for what you do?
Perfect. It's the perfect wording. Yes.
So if you, as someone who's obviously now been in this world for some time and has done this comparison, what would you outline as kind of the key differences between the approach, and when is maybe one approach better than the other to be using?
The main difference is that what the mind map tools do best is allow you to split a subject into more simple things, and you can split it as much as you want. You start with a center subject and you split in different parts. And if, for example, we talk about a product, you put a product in the middle and you say, well, we need to have a marketing direction, a business direction, an R&D direction. We need to have administration, and we will split it all that way. And at the end, you will have quite perfect mapping of what you need to do for your software and the business of your software. When you take concept maps, you don't split things. You put them in relationships. And if we talk about the business, for example, you will put your software, the competitors, your providers, because you use something that someone else provides you. You will put in there the people working for you, some people you know, and some people who can introduce you to other markets, some markets, and all the relationships between all that, let's say, entities in your neighborhood. So that's the major difference between concept maps and mind maps. And on concept maps, you can put some labels on the relationships. So for example, we will say that Stemic is not a competitor regarding MindMaps. It's a competitor regarding map tools, for example. It can be used for lawyer problematics. It can be used for business intelligence. Lawyer problematics can also be tackled by MindMaps, and you will that way construct a huge map. And in both cases, anyway, you can show the result. You can show a beautiful mind map. You can show a beautiful concept map to other people and exchange with them about what you have in mind. And for me, this is a very basic goal that mind maps and concept maps want to achieve.
Is enabling people to show their thinking, show the thought that's gone into it. And I think what's interesting with sort of how you view this in terms of how you sort of explained to me in the past as well, is it's not necessarily that you have to choose one or the other. And I think this is where people sometimes can get it a bit confused and a bit tangled up, is thinking that it's either a concept map or it's a mind map, whereas actually we at Biggerplate have always said to people, mind map is not the only thing. Sometimes you might actually use a mind map for gathering all of the things that are going to go into your plan, but you might then, as you suggested, use a concept map to sort of sketch out how those things relate to each other, which mind maps don't necessarily show that well. The analogy I always use is a sort of a family tree. So you can use a mind map sort of tree structure to show who is the son or the daughter of who and who's married who, but it doesn't necessarily show who doesn't like each other, who's not talking to who anymore, who hates each other. So I think that's where something like a concept map is going to give you a much better sense of, as you said earlier, these relationships. And I think what impressed me so much with Stemic, to just bring it back to the product, and when you sort of first released it, was sort of just being really kind of clear about, the different. Yes, we are different to mind mapping, and mind mapping is great. Whereas some of the other software products I've encountered over the years, when they're not mind mapping products, they seem to think that in order to give themselves more credibility, they have to say that mind mapping is not very good. So we're so much better than mind mapping because. So that's not a great way to win over mind mappers. I think the great thing with what you're doing with Stemic is recognizing there are two really great visual ways to show your thinking and help your thinking, and they're not exclusive. You could use both. You could use just one or the other, but it's not there's not a clash of sort of diagram types here.
Yes, I totally agree. And I can figure someone saying that mind mapping tools are not good tools. They are very good tools, and for just one reason. A lot of people use them, have a lot of success in the fact that they use it for their job or for things in their private life. We were talking about wedding. But when you see some small kids using mind map tools to understand some mathematical lessons, courses, then mind mapping tools are a success. And it's impossible to say that it's not good for something.
Yeah.
But if I take an example, in business, we all need to sign a contract at a time. At the end, we sign the text. We have to read all the text carefully. Like, for example, for insurance, you need to read the small lines in insurance, and you sign it. But in order to reach a perfect contract satisfying what you want, what your customer wants, what the other stakeholders want, you have a full process. And the process starts with who is involved and what is involved in the thing that we want to put in a contract. And when you start that process, you will have concept map, you will have mind maps, and you will have, well, let's say Microsoft Word documents. And all that documents are very important to finally have the perfect contract. You need a concept map just to figure what are the relationships between all I have to put in my contract. If we sign a contract between Biggerplate and Stemic, and we signed one, we need to say, well, here is Stemic, here is Biggerplate. Who works in there? Christophe, Liam. There are some advisors for Biggerplate, some people doing very beautiful courses in Biggerplate. Are they competitors to Stemic or not? What kind of thing we want to put? And if we go for bigger company, you will have, as we said just before, some providers, some customers, and we need to do all that. How many people are involved in there? Is there someone being in the board of Biggerplate and in tactile design, for example, our company? And it's important to know that just before trying to write the contract, and we need to take the time for having that information.
Yeah.
Most of the time, that work is the one of senior lawyers, big level lawyers. They want to figure the big picture. Once you have done that thing, and for which concept mapping tools are very well designed for it, then you need to go on the mind mapping way. In mind mapping, you will say, well, I have a contract. Here is my first section. I need to talk about the parties of the contract. I need to talk about the object. I need to talk about that. And you will split that just to be sure that you will not forget an important section, an important paragraph, important from the business aspect, from the law aspect that you have identified in your concept map, in your systemic view. And for doing that, for having a full table of content of what will appear in your contract, what's the best? Best are mind maps. So we have two different sides. And the last side, we need to write it. Yeah. It's a pity, but we need to write a contract.
I can't sign your maps.
So, yes, you can sign your map. And you need to write 20, 30, 50 pages of contract to sign at the end. And what will be the end of the process is the contract signed by all the stakeholders. This will be the official contract. But the point is that you need the good tool for the good action. Texts are sometimes good for thinking, but there are other tools for thinking. If you need just is not a bad word in my mouth. If you need to split a subject because it's too complicated, and it happens all the time in life. If you need to split it in more simple part,
just break something down.
Yes. If you need to bring something down, use a mind map. And if you need to have a systemic analysis, use a concept map. They are not opposite. We can work together just to have a perfect solution at the end.
I think there's also another version of that as well, which I've seen and used myself with a client, which is where we used the mind map as the capture everything. So we said, right, who are the stakeholders? And we just create big lists and we categorize. So we talk a lot about capture, categorize, and prioritize. So we started with a mind map and we created this big map of all the things we thought we were going to need to include. And then I was pushing him to say, okay, well, which are the most important things for us to really include? We know there's lots in here, but which things must we include? So then we started to use the mind map to sort of prioritize certain items. And then we took all of those priority items and then we put them into a concept map. Because then what we were able to do was say, right, in this view, let's see how all of these priority items connect with each other and where the problems are. So exactly to your point, just a different way around of coming at it. These are really complementary kind of ways of thinking and visualizing your thoughts. The output, whether it's a Word document or PowerPoint slides, the output is always, in my view and my experience, always going to be improved by using tools initially that are designed to help you with that thinking and that idea and information development piece. I see so often people trying to figure out what they want to say in PowerPoint slides. It's a really good way to make a really bad presentation. If you take the time to plan out what you want to say and think through what you want to say using visual tools, mind mapping, concept mapping, almost certainly your slides will be better. They will have a bit more structure and a bit more logic to them. But I think probably it's a result of time pressure. People jump straight into the output tools, probably.
And a lot of them told you, well, I need to write a contract with another company, not Biggerplate, but it's quite the same. Can you send me the contract you
copy
wrote
paste?
I will copy paste and I will send it that way. And the answer is no way, never. Don't do that. Don't you prefer to know why the contract is written that way? And I'm sure that, well, it's not in the mood of time, but I'm sure that if we could display mind maps, concept maps, instead of slides, just to bring things to the mind of other people, we will have a lot of gain of time, and the pressure would go drastically down.
Yeah.
I have an example. A friend of mine is a CEO in a startup company working in cybersecurity. And in the past, he was using slideshows to present to his board the past, the company, the new projects, strategies, the business, the competitors. And it was 20, 25 slides, 30 minutes of discussion. And at the time, he used Stemic just for himself.
Yeah.
To put all the things on the table, and he showed that to one of his board member, just to exchange with him to be sure that nothing was forbidden. And the member of the board asked him not to show the sites, but show us the map, the concept map, and explain it. And instead of 30 minutes, it took 45 seconds. Just because here is what I have in mind, where we are, where we want to go. So are we okay with that?
Yeah.
And then everybody goes out with a picture. The same way for mind mapping tools.
Yeah.
You understand the picture. You see how it's structured in the mind of the guy who faces you and who tries the guy or the girl who does his best to trying to send to your mind what he got in his.
Yeah.
And it's a very, very complicated task.
Yeah. And so I think what's interesting is, there's this kind of conceptual piece to it around mind mapping, concept mapping, and just the general principle of tools that help us with our thinking and developing ideas and information, and all of this kind of theory. And then there's the reality of trying to build a tool that can help with that. So, that brings us around to Stemic. And and kind of what I'm interested in is for still what is a relatively new tool in the market, kind of where you've got to today with it, and you and I can talk forever around how much we think there's a need for these kind of tools.
Yes.
I've been talking about this for most of my adult life, but what has your experience been then of bringing Stemic to the market and kind of getting those sort of user stories? You know, what are you learning, and maybe what are some of the surprises? Because I always find it quite amusing where developers have one idea of how their software is going to be used, and then they release it into the wild and people do something totally different with your tool. So what is your, you know, where is Stemic at today? Tell us a little bit about the company and what your kind of, where you've reached on your journey at the moment.
Today we released the free version of Stemic 1.5 years ago, and the aim was to hamster users, to tell people, well, take it, try it, give us some feedbacks, even some very strange ones.
Was that my feedback?
No, there was some very strange ones, and then yes, try it and use it, and we released the pro version last winter, just before Christmas, with some additions.
So just for clarity for people watching, there's a free version of Stemic still exists. People can go and try it out for free, and it's not a time limited. It's use free forever.
Use free. There's just a limit of the amount of object you can.
Right. So then if you want to do more with the tool, you sort of want to really make full use of it and go on with it. That's when you've then got now a pro option to upgrade and get that access. Perfect. And so what did you kind of learn then as you sort of went through these steps?
What we learned is that people need to try.
Yeah, right.
They need to try. If you say to someone, well, do you want to buy a car? They won't say, I don't know what is a car. But they will try the car. So they need to try. So let them try. And at the very beginning, in the pro version, we put some very specific features. There are still some very specific features, but we deliver some former pro features to the free one because people need to try.
Yeah.
And at a time when the people need to do some business with that kind of tool, they don't want to have some limitations, so they will pay a small fee for an online version. And when I say the small fee, is quite the same price as all other MindMap tools online. Well, it's around 9. Most of them are between 5 and 15 euros per month. So we are just in the middle, 9. And we won't compete on the price. Just the need to compete on the price. So we were working with professional people working for their company, and while using Stemic Online, at the end they asked us, well, I have some sensible data to put in my maps, so I'm not sure if I want to put it on an online software. And they told us, well, what if you would deliver us a private Stemic server just for us, so we will not mix our data with other people. So okay, so we in the last few months we worked on that plan, that new plan. We call it an enterprise Stemic plan, and we deliver some private servers that we manage and where people are just between them, so with some specific features. And it was the new lesson that we learned, that even if you explain to people that the server are well done, there's a security, the servers are in France, so you're protected for the data regarding some other countries, even that they don't want to have their data mixed with other people's data. so from a business point of view, wow, we need to adapt and to try some other things.
And it seems like you've kind of been able to adapt to situations like that quite quickly. So do you as a team sort of work on a relatively kind of are you trying to work very responsively to sort of new issues, or have you kind of got a 2-3 year roadmap?
No,
What kind of way do you come at it?
We are again a design agency, and our designer Perrine, she planned things. We plan things for the next 2-3 years, but in our dreams,
Right. Yeah.
But the question she asks and the question we ask is always the same. What would be the best new feature for the next release?
Yeah.
And sometimes the answer is, well, a not so simple one. So we will take some time to create it. But every time it's look at what our users send us as feedbacks.
Yeah.
And either these are some new features, and it's very cool. Sometimes we need to rethink about some feature that we designed, developed properly. But when the people use that, either it's a little bit complicated, or as you said, you figure that they will use it in a way and they use it in a completely other way. And even if the designing phase is done with some users around us, we still encounter some other expectations. And so, for example, we are in Stemic, you have some sticky notes. It means that you put more information, you write, you can have a more long text, and the look and feel is very different if you have some conceptualized notes. If you said that you work with a car, you can have a picture of a car. When these are notes, these are just text. And we took a lot of time for that feature, and I love that feature. But at the time, with all the feedback we had, we, Stemic and Olivier and Thomas and the main developers, thought, well, this feature is very good, but it's not good enough because there are some limitations, some things that are not so easy to do to understand. So the decision was very easy. Let's do it again. So stop the work, Perrine back to the design phase. She designed another thing, some other interactions, and we work on it. And it's gonna be delivered in next September. And this is the way that we work. What can we bring to people that is the way they can put on a screen what they have in mind? And it's not a nightmare for me, but it's sometimes very frustrating because you you think about, well, where would I would like to be in 3 years from now? And I would like, like kids, I would like to start now to work on that thing.
I don't want to start now. I want to be there now.
Yes. But it's not the good way to do things. You need to go, you need to slow down and to think to what is the best thing to bring to your users. And it's that way that they will stay with you. They will understand the difference between Stemic, mind maps, text, and other tools. And at the end, mind maps and concept map tools, as you always say, are here to help people to think. So if our tools are more complicated than thinking and using a pen and paper, then we will lose our users. And we go back to pen and paper. And sometimes it's good to use pen and paper. So we have plenty of ideas for the next years. We're involved in research projects, working on in concept map. You can describe the links between the objects. So we have plenty of new features that we would like to bring in that, and it's going to happen, but it's going to happen on the right time, and for sure depending on the market.
So it sounds like you're trying, as I would suggest software developers should sort of be listening to kind of what people are using your software for, to inform if we've got 10 choices, we should choose the 2 or 3 that are likely to help people solve problems. So if we talk a bit about Stemic users today, who is using Stemic? What are they using it for? Like, what is, do you have a sense of, is there a kind of normal type of Stemic use case? Where are you seeing it being used?
We have a lot of different cases. The lawyers are one of the
lawyers.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. And it was the example we discussed. Before writing the contract, they want to analyze the context.
Yeah.
And they do it that way. We have some users in business intelligence. And it's very close, because business intelligence is analyzing the context of a company to know strategically where to go. And lawyers do the same. When they have to write a contract for Biggerplate, if you change your lawyer, they need to analyze the context and the problem. So it's a very, very close situation. We have some users for investigations, for example.
Right.
Yes.
Investigations in what sense?
Police.
Right. Because I could see Stemic being used, and somebody many years ago showed me it was a concept map, and it was about forensic IT.
Yeah.
So doing sort of, so after somebody's had a major hack, they'll hire a forensic IT company to try and figure it all out. But it's a really complicated area with lots of potential connections. And this person, I mean, this is probably about 8 years ago, showed me a pretty sort of rudimentary in terms of what they used to build it. But it was a really comprehensive schematic of this sort of thing. So I could absolutely see investigations. Journalism, I can imagine, would
but
something like Stemic would really
for
help
the time
with
being,
that as well.
I've not been in contact with a journalist, but it would be a good case. And investigation, yes, it's all for forensic IT, cybersecurity. We work for that. We have some people using it for company restructuration. And it was very funny. It was someone who ate computers. So she don't know how to use computers. But she used Stemic to create a map of the actual organization of her company. And based on that, she changed the organization. And you know what was the result? It was a tree. So it was something that could be expressed at the end in a mind map.
Right.
Yes.
So do you find some people are actually using, I mean, I see all the time people using the term mind map to cover all sorts of different visuals. And to me, it doesn't matter that that's the case. I know what a mind map sort of really looks like and sort of normally is, but it doesn't matter to me if people call other things mind maps. But do you find some people are using Stemic as a tool to create those kind of central diagrammed tree structure that I would recognize as a mind map?
They start that way, and most of the time they put some other links, and it's no longer.
Right. So they start thinking that's what they want to do, and then they say, well, actually, I need to connect that to that. And then it probably does sort of emerge into more of a concept diagram, maybe a bit more naturally.
Yes, it's more natural, but at the end, if the result is the mind map, it means that kind of people use the concept map to provide a mind map. And then the very next step is they stay in Stemic because they want to stay in Stemic, but they can send it to someone who will translate it in a mind map and then continue the process. We have some other users, being some kids and some students.
Right. I was going to ask you about education, whether that's kind of, part of your user base at the moment, or maybe in the future, because I think a little bit like you said about the lady who was hated computers. Stemic is very easy to start with, and lots of software companies will say that, but that's not the case. to just start creating and because you're not having to sort of adhere to any particular structure, it's very easy to just start building out your ideas, even if you don't know really what you're aiming for. So I could see that definitely working for people who don't like computers and who maybe aren't quite so happy having, these big menus with loads of options and the stuff that can be overwhelming. Stemic is very clean, very elegant, very easy to start. So in education, are you seeing sort of that ease of use and the simplicity and the freedom being quite liberating maybe for students?
I got two examples. One with my kid.
Well, they have to like it though, Christophe. They have to say it's useful, don't they? Because they're related to you.
Yes. And it was a bestseller in his classroom. Right. But just because he tried to express what he had in mind with the MindMap tool.
Yeah.
First with a mind map on paper, and it's very hard because you reach the limit of the paper, and then they tried with the mind map, but in his mind there was some interconnections.
Yeah.
And it was difficult to express, so he used it, and it was easy for him. But the main example is a young boy who was dyslexical. This is the word in English also.
Dyslexic, yeah.
Yeah, he was dyslexic and a lot of other disease. And these are the kind of boy that in France, the school give them a computer just to be able to take notes and things. And it was during the philosophical course. For dyslexical people, philosophical courses are not so obvious. And he had some trouble to write down on the paper and in text the what he had in mind, and the way to connect authors, ideas, concepts, and it was very complicated for him. And he tried Stemic, and he tried to put on that screen everything that he understood about the subject. And I'd always talk about that boy because he created one of the most beautiful concept map I saw. And at the end, he was able to talk about that philosophical subject with a teacher.
Right.
While in the past, it was impossible for him.
Yeah.
It was very, very, very difficult. So for education, yes, it's a good example, and one of the unexpected. I get to unexpected usage. First one is for authors.
Authors, right?
Or movies.
Yeah,
and for me, honestly, I thought that MindMap was the perfect tool for them.
Right.
But they split the book or the movie in some.
So you could imagine a situation where we have a whole virtual event at Biggerplate called Read Write Map, which is all about using mind mapping for reading and writing. And yes. Yeah, absolutely. So mind maps are great for authors to break down their stories, to build out character traits and characteristics and things. Yeah. So I would agree with you. I'd say, hey, mind mapping is going to work great for that. So then what was your experience then?
And the experience is that they said, well, yes, mind mapping are good, but how can I figure all the connection between the character, places, the different time slots, the different objects, the reason, and as you said, how do I explain that guy hate that guy, but he's friend with that one, and yes, for sure. So okay, if you're an author of books or movies, yes, you can use Stemic. And another funny use is that we use Stemic to design Stemic.
I would hope so.
Yes, and mostly for technical hard points.
Yeah.
And one of the most difficult points is how do you pay taxes when you are software online? You have national taxes, European taxes, then now you have Brexit. Thank you. English taxes.
You're welcome. Yeah.
and you have to understand what to develop in your software to respect the law.
Right. Yeah.
And if you ask a lawyer to explain you the taxes, the added value taxes, it's a nightmare.
You run up a pretty big bill pretty quickly.
Yes. And your conclusion is, instead of being a computer scientist, it would have been better if I would have been a lawyer.
I've thought that many times.
Yes,
unfortunately, I wasn't anywhere near smart enough. But yeah.
And
you've used Stemic to sort of map out this, amongst other things within the company, to map out this kind of tax complexity that is for small businesses. You're a small business just like we are, is really overwhelming, actually, and is a really poor use of your skills and your time to lose too much time on this. So you've been using Stemic to sort of map out that picture as you learn your way through it, which also, I suppose, is an interesting part of this for Stemic, is it probably serves as really good documentation.
Yes.
For future, you could probably look back 12 months from now and say, has anything changed in how we treat UK tax?
And it's exactly what happened when we in Stemic. You have a collaborative way if you use the pro offer, and how the server and the client communicates, what kind of messages are exchanged in all that way, and what are the security problems. And the developers did a map for themselves to be sure of what to do. And a few months later, I needed to think about it for answering to some customer. I just took the map they created and I took a look, and okay, yes, if I follow that path, okay, I understand why they did that and how they did that, and it was the memory of what is in the software. And we had all the context, and they even put the name of the functions of the objection that we handle. They put that sometimes, and it doesn't change. And the last surprising thing is I got a PhD, so I figure what is about to defend your PhD to some colleagues and to express it, and some PhD student prepared all their presentation and show their presentation just in a Stemic way.
Wow! So that sort of culmination of that finale of PhD work, they trusted to Stemic to use that for their defense, the talking through.
Yes. Wow. Right. Yes, and they did that because it allowed them to always explain something regarding the context of what they are saying. And while doing that, we all have a better visual memory than a textual memory. And then people always follow the process, the reasoning, the explanations. Whether they agree or not is another problem. But it was very easy to follow, and it was a subject. It was subject that I don't understand. Some economical problem, but it was very easy to follow. And honestly, when it told me, well, I will present my PhD, I will defend my PhD using only concept maps, and I was figuring myself, thinking back in the past and trying to say to my PhD director, well, I will use a concept map or a mind map just to defend my PhD, and I would probably never.
You would not have felt that confident, but you wouldn't have had Stemic, so maybe that's why.
And he did that, and it was a success.
Wow, fantastic!
And it was not at all expected.
Wow. So you've got in a relatively short time then some really interesting use cases, and I suppose one of the challenges for you and Perrine and your team is to potentially have to think about, which of those use cases, which of those types of user are we going to focus our development plans on, our attention, which is a really difficult thing for anybody. So looking forward, I'm just keeping an eye on the time, because you and I could talk for hours, but what is kind of coming next for Stemic, in terms of the direction or specifics? What kind of comes next for the tool that you've built, and kind of who's it for primarily now that you're focused?
The very next step is the competitive refactoring of sticky notes. Different ways, a way to offer some very big differences between objects. We need to go on the tactile device,
right?
And it's it's mandatory, and it's not so easy. So it's going to be one of the direction. And for the very next step, we are in between. We hesitate between being more connected to data, because we all have a lot of data in databases and in very, very good software collecting them, analyzing them, but the data feeds our thoughts. So how to figure that? And we are thinking about that plan. And the other part is, since we talk about presentation, defense of subjects, isn't there a way where we can embed in Stemic some presentation features?
That's great.
Meaning that you will, yes, so Microsoft won't be happy, but isn't there some way that you can not take some copy screen of Stemic or Mindmaps to put them in a slideshow
and lose sight of the whole picture that you've built?
Yes, and just stay in the tool.
Yeah.
Stay in the tool and indicate in the tool all the arguments or the things that only you put in few words in your slides. So maybe there's a way in that part. So we need to decide, and to take the time to decide.
Yes, decide which comes out. It's a never-ending challenge, really, isn't it? As soon as you've done one thing, there's a whole other set. But I suppose I always look at it from a Biggerplate perspective. I'd rather have lots of ideas to choose from than none. So that's how I have to be. It's better to have some of those tough choices than to think I'm out of ideas. But presentation mode, I think, is fascinating. I think I could really see that working from in terms of Stemic, how that you build up your ideas and build up your understanding, and then be able to present it to others in some way within the tool, not have to leave the tool, is great. I think that data piece is fascinating. I think this challenge we all have of, Biggerplate's again a good example. There's all sorts of great data theoretically that I could use to make decisions, but actually getting clear about where it is, what it is, how it connects, how to look at it in a way that's not totally overwhelming is really challenging. And I suppose that sort of visual front end in some ways could be quite an interesting area. So you're going to have a busy 12 months ahead, aren't you?
Yes, it's good news. As you said, it's better to have too much ideas.
Exactly. Better to be busy than bored. That's great. So I suppose in the interest of time, Christophe, I probably will wrap up our chat here. But I'm really grateful for you, as always, for your time, and I always enjoy our conversations. And now other people can hopefully enjoy hearing from you. I think it's really important that people sort of meet maybe the people behind the products. I would encourage anybody who's watching this to go and visit stemic.app. I'll make sure the name's up on the screen there so you can go visit it. There's a free version that you can get stuck into straight away, and you'll see, as I said, very easy, very elegant, get started up and running. And as Christophe has sort of repeated throughout this discussion, it's just another great possible tool to have at your disposal. It doesn't replace mind maps. It's not better or worse than mind maps. It's an absolutely kind of complementary approach in this kind of visual toolkit. And I was delighted when I encountered you and Stemic, because I thought there's a really neat, uncomplicated solution to a problem here. I've seen people try to build concept maps in mind mapping software that doesn't handle that well, and it's better to use the right tool for the right job. So I guess, Christophe, congratulations on all your progress so far, and
thank you.
And to Perrine and the team. It's been a pleasure working with you. We're delighted to have you guys as partners to Biggerplate now, and we're really excited to see what comes next with all those tough choices you have.
Yes, it's gonna happen, and it's gonna happen soon. So it's a pleasure. Thank you to Biggerplate for existing also.
It's great.
It's an important thing to see all that stuff on Biggerplate and defend the visual way of thinking.
Defend the visual way of thinking. I like that. That's a good note to finish on. So thank you, Christophe, for joining us. Thank you
Liam,
for watching, for obviously tons more resources to help you go further with mind mapping and even things that aren't quite mind mapping. Head on over to biggerplate.com. And if you want to go and try out a really great concept mapping tool, head on over to stemic.app. Until next time, thanks for watching.